Hello, I'm Nicki Thornton and I am the author of 3 books: The Last Chance Hotel, The Bad Luck Lighthouse and now The Cutthroat Cafe. And these 3 books are crime fiction set in a world where magic exists. So sometimes sorcerers don't behave themselves and then they need to be investigated by the magical police. And my detective character, Seth Seppi, often gets caught up in the investigations, trying to work out what magic might have been used and how magicians and sorcerers manage to cover up their crimes. So the first one is The Last Chance Hotel, where Seth discovers the whole world of magic is real when he's accused himself of killing a sorcerer. In the Bad Luck Lighthouse, Seth gets caught up in an investigation at a remote lighthouse which is in the middle of being renovated, and the whole project is beset with problems. Everyone thinks that perhaps there is a ghost at work, but Seth discovers that he thinks it may be a sorcerer. And my latest book is The Cutthroat Cafe, where Seth arrives in a town where quite a lot of magical people live, although they still have to be very secretive. He desperately wants to see if he has any chance of being magical himself and get an apprenticeship, but he arrives in Grimici at exactly the wrong time because it's the apprentices this time who are being attacked. Seth needs to solve the crime, work out who is the apprentice assassin before his chance of ever learning magic completely fails. I hope that you enjoy finding out a bit more about Seth and his magical world. They are a series, but you can read them in any particular order because each one is standalone with a complete mystery in each story. So I'm going to read aloud of the first chapter of each of these, and you should be able to listen if you'd like to. And I'm going to read you the first chapter of my story, The Bad Luck Lighthouse, which is about a character called Seth Seppi who arrives at the Snake's Mouth Lighthouse where renovations are taking place, and he discovers there have been lots of problems, and he gets involved in an investigation because everyone suspects the lighthouse may be haunted, but Seth suspects that maybe all the bad luck at the lighthouse might be down to a sorcerer who is trying to cause problems for the family. I'm going to read you the first chapter, which is called The Prospect of Magic. In the Last Chance Hotel, Seth Seppi was listening anxiously to the sounds of Mr. and Mrs. Bunn handing over ham and egg sandwiches to 2 hairy walkers who had been staying. They were offering cheery wishes for the next part of their journey. Seth had always listened for the sounds of guests departing, just waiting for the chance to sneak into the quiet kitchen and secretly practice his great love cooking, learnt from his father before his father had disappeared. But Seth had learned so many astonishing truths lately that there was no part of his life that he felt he truly understood anymore. Now it wasn't cooking he sneaked off to practice in secret every spare moment he got. The hairy and unexpected guests had stumbled gratefully upon the remote hotel located in the sleepy depths of the Last Hope forest. They had joyfully rested their blistered feet on the furniture, cheerfully left a skim of beard trimmings in the sink, accompanied by much singing, snored loudly, and hadn't stopped eating everything put in front of them, including very smelly goat's cheese everyone else had rejected, and a Christmas pudding Seth had been trying to get rid of since December. And now they were gone. As he finally heard Horatio and Noribun slam the front door, Seth reached the highest shelf to do what he now did in secret. Among the sacks of flour he had tucked a book, one with a bright pink jacket covered in silly doodles and decorated with fluorescent lettering, a beginner's guide to really easy peasy magic. It was only a few weeks ago that the arrival of a group of sorcerers had turned Seth's whole world upside down, not least because he'd narrowly avoided being arrested for murder. Seth had discovered that magic was real, and the sorcerers had brought the tantalising promise that he might be one of them, someone born with a spark of magic. But just a spark was enough, Inspector Pewter of the Magical Police, Magicon, had explained. Pewter had given him the Easy Peasy book and left Seth with a cheery instruction to give magic a try. Seth's shoulders slumped and his hands were shaking as he turned the pages. Easy peasy magic, really? The terrible smell of burnt sour milk still hung about the kitchen as a constant reminder that his magic was an utter disaster. Seth stared at the book, feeling he was going to have to confront the most difficult truth of all. He was never going to be able to master a spell and would never be admitted to the magical world. He would never grow up to be a great and learned sorcerer. And that meant he was never going to be able to discover if a lot of difficult things he'd been told were true, and look into just a couple of things that were troubling him. To do all that, he needed to be able to perfect a spell, just one. He pushed the book away. If there was easy magic, this was not it. He put his head in his hands and groaned. Neither Inspector Pewter nor his other new friend in the magical world, Angelique Scare, had bothered to come and help. He felt all the powerlessness of being here, miles from anywhere, in the worst possible position of tantalisingly knowing about the magical world, but facing up to never being part of it. And as he stood there alone, facing nothing but his failure, he found himself thinking something he promised himself he never would. Was it possible there might be magic he could do? Could it be that the only magic he would ever be able to do would be of the wrong kind? With a quick and guilty glance over his shoulder, Seth reached into a handy inside pocket of the bright blue tunic he wore and took out a small black book. It was so old that the pages were held together with a scarlet thread, and he turned the cracked and stiff pages, and Seth felt, as he always did, that he was meant to use this book. It was crammed with simple family recipes. Mostly, there were weird instructions for creating perfectly innocent homemade boot polish and even oven cleaner. Okay, so it was sprinkled with the odd spell, and Pewter and Angelique had wanted to take this book away from him because some of it was disturbing magic. Sure, there were banned spells in here, details of dark devices and sinister ideas. Yet it felt so right, so comfortable in his hand. Reading it was like being close to a trusted friend. And just looking at the book didn't make him some sort of sinister sorcerer. Even so, a ball of uncertainty and fear mixed crept into his stomach because he knew he shouldn't even be looking at this book. But the magic in it seemed to whisper to him in a reassuring voice, telling him he could rely on it. The magic seemed to whisper more insistently. It seemed to be saying that in a corner of the Last Chance Hotel, in the middle of the Last Hope Forest, all alone, you may have no one to help, but there was also no one to see or care if you dabbled in just a little dark magic.